All right, so I just want to focus here today on explaining to you guys how I see class right from the beginning. Okay, I like to focus. The idea is we get this classroom in a country that doesn't use English as a major language. I want to focus on, for instance, when I shared this personal approach of teaching English to beginners, especially in contexts where English is not part of the student's daily life. Okay, in many countries, learners require to study English in school, but they rarely use this outside school unless they are watching something or listening to something. So I want to focus on those students right from the get-go. So I'm not so broad when I'm talking. And just a little something here for AI companion got to my screen here. All right.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Okay. So to understand the challenge of teaching beginners, I would like to address that in my experience, when students grow up in environments where English is absent, the language feels a little bit abstract, feels distant to them in a personal level. Okay, they're more watching, and it comes to just another subject that they must pass, and see this in both children and adults. Okay, when they're beginning their English learning process. And I have learned that the traditional grammar-based methods and the communicative approach, they don't meet the students' needs right in the beginning. It takes a little bit of time. So then my first question, as I always enter a classroom right in the beginning, was, what do I teach them first? What words do I teach them first? Should I start with, what's your name? Should I start on, how are you? Which words, which constructions, which sentence should I address? And my master thesis that I did here in Germany was based on that, my preferred teaching approach. And there I argued, and I still argued, that we should focus on the most frequent verbs, nouns, and adjectives that the students will encounter when they are outside the classroom, when they're watching a movie, reading a paper, or whatever they feel like it. And it's very important for us to know that learning a language is not always a perfect curve, a hockey graph. Is always a little bit, there is a path where you stop a little bit, there is a little bit of the motivation, and then when you hit certain level, then there is exponential growth and the students' knowledge. And to get a little bit faster to this path where the students don't get so stuck, they really have the exponential learning curve. I would like to address that if we start the first day in school teaching the most used verbs, nouns, and adjectives, and show them the constructions of it, the students will be free from us as soon as possible. They will be free to choose to go online, to choose the movies, to choose the subtitles in English faster. It will take them not that long to do that. And that's the threshold that I would like to get my students as fast as possible. So in order to do that, I created my own approach, my own method, and I use, as I said, the high frequency words. I use structured and patterned input, for instance, stories, visuals, and repetitive sentence models. I would also like to say that when we do a class, my classes usually don't take only 45 minutes. I think of a class of 90 minutes or even 120, even if they are dividing 3 different days. Okay, and I rely on the strategic use of the student's native language. I love L1 in my classroom. Absolutely adore using L1 in my classroom. And there is a big book that I like a lot. I don't know if you guys are able to see this, but it's called The Bilingual Reform. I can send a link if anyone is interested after. It argues for the usage of the L1 in the classroom. And using the first language, it's important that we don't use only for explaining grammar. It's absolutely, you have a construction, you have a sentence, you ask the student, so what do you think this construction means? And if the student needs help, of course, you tell them that in this construction, this word or this noun or this verb means certain things. And we need to reflect, for instance, when I introduce a verb like go, I quickly show that its meanings in the student's language. For example, in German, you say gehen, And I explained that when we use went means ging. And I don't do, for instance, any grammar explanation. I focus only on what does that go means in a sentence. For instance, if I say the sentence she went home, I will translate that sie ging zu Hause. So the idea is always the translation of that construction, not the specific word. And then I would like also to focus on the memory of that. So how many times do I have to repeat the same word in different constructions? I tried to look for so many papers to have this answer, but I was never able to find one. But the average that they say is from 5 times to 8 times to get the synapses strong enough for them to remember the word and its meaning. So I like to do is I do multiple choice tests almost every week with my students. I bring some of the sentences and I ask them, what does that sentence mean? Sometimes I break this construction or the sentence into other new sentence, but I try to focus always the same words there. And so I write the sentence, I give 4, not 5, but 4 possible answers. And the student has to select one. And usually this is important to be done weekly and in big numbers. So you don't do only 20 sentences, you do 40, you do 50 sentences. And this routine keeps the students engaged and they know what's coming for a class. So it's not thinking about one specific class, but it's about to focus on what is to be gained in the month, in the trimester, or even if we are to talk about it, the whole year. Okay, so there is one study that we can argue now that I really like it. It's about when should we start teaching English? Okay, when is it important for us to start? Hello, sir.
Oh, hi,
Sorry.
yourself.
Hi.
Trouble. Yeah. Hi.
I'm just presenting here. If just
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
good.
Yeah.
And this point is very important for me because it really touches on, how can I say, it touches on when do we start? Do we start with kids when they're 5, 6, or do we start when kids are 8, or do we start with adults? Is there a difference? What's the big thing? And there was always papers saying, no, adult teaching should be this, children's teaching should be different. But if we are to argue with one paper that came recently from Simone Finningas in Switzerland, she wrote a paper called All Good Things Come in Threes: Early English Learning and 2 other, motivation and communicative language teaching. So she argues that in Switzerland, different cantons used to start English in different grades. And the results actually were almost the same if you start on the 3rd grade or in the 1st grade. The result only changed when we used a different method, when the students were participating. So it doesn't matter if we start at the 1st grade and we only sing songs, we only talk about the weather, or we do, this head, shoulders, knees, and toes. But if we start on 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, or with adults, and we focus on a method that addresses these most frequent words, I think the results can appear much faster, and the time that it is necessary for a student to be in school and learn English can be diminished. So because we all had students in school that after 9 years of learning English, they couldn't even speak yet. So we all have those students from time to time. So it's very important for me that we not only see ourselves as people who are just there to address or talk about or sing or anything. It's important for me that we have a focus. And there is another book that I like a lot. It's called The Beautiful Tree. It was written by an English gentleman. And there is a part in this book that it writes about how low-income families in India turn to private schools, okay, because they believe in education. And that struck me very interesting because you need to show results when you're in the private sector. And it's very interesting that most of us sometimes are in private schools. If we are in government schools, we're given sometimes what to teach. So they have this, especially here, for instance, in Bavaria, where I live in Germany. If you work in a state school, it comes from a council above, and they tell you what to teach, when to teach, and how to teach. So your freedom is very diminished. Yet I work in a private school because I like the freedom. Even if my boss sometimes comes to me and tells me, I don't think you should be doing that, I still can argue why do I think pedagogically that is important. So what resonates with this is that we as teachers, when we go to that first class, when we see our students for the first time and we teach them the most frequent verbs, and let's say we start a first class with the verb go or have, which is the second most frequent verb in English language, and we say I have, and then let's put another word there, ball, which is not the most frequent, but it can relate to the student's age. So if we have that in mind, it's very important for us to know who we're dealing, and the enthusiasm and motivation of the students will continue. And now the two last final thoughts that I have. The first one is I prioritize what matters most. Okay, I do not like to think that I need to do a whole shebang in my class, put a lot of posters, talk a lot about. No, I prioritize. And I like my classrooms to be maximum of 27, which is the dream. Sometimes in language schools we have 10, sometimes in other places we have 40, and if we go higher up, we can even get 50. But if we prioritize this frequent and useful language that we can always have, the students will get independent faster. And I use the first language intelligently. So let's face it, to explain, to clarify, to address issues that come with the not understanding a particular construction. I assess the students regularly, so it's important for us as teachers to know what the students actually know or what they don't know, being the end goal, writing, reading, and speaking in English. And I don't believe in early instructions guarantees success. So if we were to talk at one point, first, second grade, the early the better, I don't believe that. I believe it's the method that is used which will achieve, and time matters less than the technique. And I always aim to build confidence through early wins. It's very important for us to show the students that they can read. So usually I have, after 3 classes, I already start with a text of 5 lines, and it's impressive to see the students after 3 classes reading 5 lines and understanding the little story there. And this motivation should be always continue, should always be addressed, should always be there. So see, this is the foundation that I came up with. This is the idea why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I want to just talk a little bit ahead because I don't want to ever stop teaching, but I also want to one day to retire, because I now teach from 1st to 5th grade, and sometimes I get a high school grade and sometimes private adults. But my energy will come down eventually, and I want to focus more on helping other teachers also address the issues, because our profession sometimes feels like a very lonely one, that you can't argue or articulate what's going on, and you feel stuck sometimes. You don't know what to do with your class, you have disciplinary issues, you have so many other issues, and there's so much that involves teaching and being a teacher. And I can't be there for all the teachers all the time, and I can't focus on everything. So my focus will always be every year to make my method better, my book better, and make it easier for everyone to use from the get-go. So I would like you, and open for questions, that the last part that I want to say is that I'm focus my career on making our beginner students get to a path or get to a level that they can have some independence outside the classroom, or outside without having contact with us. That's my main goal. Thank you, guys. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Right. It was amazing to listen to you.